So we get out of this class, we're really excited, we finish up a book, what do we do next? Do we assume that it's dribble because we haven't practiced enough and write another one immediately?
Yeah, but you still send it out. You still send it out.
Okay, we do?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah. You're going to send that book out. You're going to get rejected everywhere. It doesn't matter. Okay? Yeah. Because it might be awesome.
Okay.
So what you're going to finish the book and you write in this class. You are going to do a draft of it. You're going to set it aside and write something else. And a few months later, you're going to come back to it, do another revision, perhaps having workshopped it during that time, and then you're going to submit it out.
Okay.
You're going to be doing this research at the same time, but don't wait till you have all this done to be submitting. Just start submitting.
Okay.
You do want to do all of this, but just start submitting. Then if you're really serious, you're going to, you decide, I'm focusing on agents, I'm focusing on editors, I'm focusing on self-publishing, I'm doing all three. When I took this class in 2000, I was there. I went to Dave and I said, Dave, I just finished my 6th book. It's pretty good. What do I do? He said, you're flying to New York next month to the Nebula weekend. I said, I don't have any money. He's like, find some money. Sell your car. You're flying to New York. I flew to New York and I met Joshua Bilmes, who became my agent. He didn't do it for a few years because he rejected my first few books. He also told me, you're going to go to World Fantasy Convention. I said, I don't have money for that. It's in Montreal. He said, you're going anyway. So I went to World Fantasy Convention and I met my editor at a World Fantasy. It wasn't that one. I went to World Fantasy 3 years before I met the editor who eventually bought my books. But this was a different era. The self-publishing thing wasn't here and the ebook thing wasn't here. But that is what Dave told me, and that's what I will tell you. If you want to publish traditionally, you're going to go to these things. In children's, you are going to start going to the conferences rather than the conventions. The big difference is that you are going to sit in rooms and be lectured at instead of watching people with Klingon foreheads get drunk. I don't know which one you would find more fun, but the conferences tend to be things like the Writers for Young Readers, which they do locally, and they have a lot of these conferences. Usually every conference in children's will bring out an agent or an editor, often both. And you will buy in and get a pitch session with them. This is your best hope, I think. Well, other than writing a fantastic book and landing a great agent. But if you want to start networking, that's what you're going to do. Writers for Young Readers is actually a very solid resource. LDS Storymakers tends to bring in agents too, and that's local. And they tend to be children's agents. You also have the nice advantage in children's in that one of the best children's publishers that is not in New York happens to be in Salt Lake, and that's Deseret Book. They publish the Shadow Mountain imprint that does Fablehaven and all of those guys. They tend to like middle grade fantasy books. They do some science fiction, mostly middle grade though. And they're local, and you can meet their editors by going to things like LTUE, Life, the Universe, and Everything, and things like that, which usually, LTUE is a great place to go. I love the con, but you're not going to find, Joshua Bilmes there most years. But you will find all the people from Shadow Mountain. A lot of the other local LDS publishers should be looked at with a cocked eyebrow. Okay?
You also find a lot more of the people who are helping with self-publishing.
Yeah. Yeah.
LTUE.
Yeah. The reason you should look at them with a cocked eyebrow is a lot of them don't have very good bookstore penetration and are not doing any of this stuff that a good publisher should be doing for you. And they are well-meaning people who don't have any sort of anything real they can offer you. There are a few of the middle ones that are okay. But basically, Shadow Mountain's the only one that will pay you enough money to make a living on your writing. And even then, it's kind of sketchy for your first few books, how much you'll get. Shadow Mountain is not paying six-figure advances.
So I know in the world of nonfiction, when
Yes.
you send in a query letter,
Yep.
one of the things you do is you kind of talk up live published here. And
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Do you do that with these? And if you have publication credits in other genres, do you?
Yeah, that would be legit. It's more important in nonfiction. Because in nonfiction, your credentials sell your book. In this, you want to include legitimate publishing credits, which would include the big magazines, or the equivalents in other genres, things like that. Otherwise, included if it's relevant. For instance, if you're writing a science fiction book about a physicist on Mars, and you happen to have a degree in physics, that's a relevant thing to include. Your degree in physics probably isn't relevant if you're writing your fantasy book, or the fact that you won your high school writing contest is not very relevant. The fact that you've self-published 12 books is not very relevant unless they're selling really well. And then you can say, I have sold 40,000 copies of my self-published book. Would you be interested? They're going to say yes. Okay? So...
And this is the book that you published? 40,000 copies are interested in picking
Oh
up
yeah,
after that?
they're totally interested because you have not tapped the market that does the print books. They may not buy you, but they'll be interested because 40,000 books online says they should be able to sell that many print books at least. And usually, in the recent past, 40,000 books online probably means that with a proper marketing push and all of this sort of stuff, they'll be selling hundreds of thousands. This is why Christopher Paolini got picked up in the old days, before self-publishing was the big new thing with Aragon. They sold, I don't know, you'd have to ask Christopher, but they sold thousands of books on their own, and Random House came to him and said, "You're selling lots of books. We can sell more." And they said yes, and so he became, and a lot of the big self-published authors are landing book deals now. And a lot of them are keeping their electronic rights, as Brian talked about, or Joe talked about, so, last week. All right, where did we get on this list? We got through 2 of these. That's pretty good. I have to still talk about. I'm going to put this on here. Queries. Wow. Okay, query letters. So add that to your list of things to remind me about what to do. Otherwise, I think I've covered this in intricate detail for you. Hopefully you have now a better understanding of the publishing industry and what you would go about doing when you want to publish. Really, writing great books is what you're going to do. But after that, hunting editors and agents, if you want to be in New York, you're going to have to figure out how to do that. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe you'll be like Naomi Novik, and someone can like... Her husband was like Stephen King's accountant or something like that. You'll have to ask her. They knew Stephen King somehow. Stephen King read her book and said, "I love this," and gave her a cover quote. And then they said, "We've got a Stephen King cover quote. Who wants to publish it?" And hands started to raise. So maybe you'll be that lucky. Or Pat Rothfuss, who I think you'll have to ask him. I think he wrote with Writers of the Future. Got a Writers of the Future, which is a big award. Kevin G. Anderson was on the judges board and wrote to him and said, "Your book is really good. Why don't we forward it on to my agent?" And he then forwarded it on to his agent, Matt Bialer, who said, "This is fantastic," and then sold it at a big auction to Daw. I don't know if it was an auction, actually. I think it was, but sold it for a lot of money to Daw. Maybe you'll have something like that. So I have passed on a few of my students' works. I think I told you guys once. It's happened 3 times, I think, to my agent or editor. So
has anything come of that?
Yeah, Jancy got published. She came and talked to you guys.
So what do you normally do with those? Do you just like read the first chapter and say, "Okay, this still is going someplace," and send it on?
Well, no. I mean, if I work with you in the class and you really impress me, don't worry if you don't. Okay, you're all at various stages in your writing. I will say, "This is really good. If you finish it, I will read it, and if I like it, I'll send it to my agent." And 2 of the people I've said that to never finished their book and didn't send it to me. Yeah, I know, you're cringing at the lost opportunity, but several of them did, and I passed them on. Brian McClellan, who's publishing, is one that I passed along very good words on. He didn't end up with my agent or my editor, but I spoke very highly of him and passed his work along to them, and now he's published with Orbit. So yeah.